This podcast of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs, is sponsored by AAA Heating and Air.
The premier HVAC company in the Midlands is growing. Are you a top HVAC technician?
AAA Heating and Air is looking for dedicated applicants to fill their fast-growing service department with top-notch HVAC technicians.
If you're the best, then they want you. If you're ready to stop working and start a career, you can earn up to $100,000 plus a year at AAA Heating and Air.
Quality candidates will have at least 2 years experience and a good driving record. Benefits include top industry salaries, commission on service and unit sales, set call limits, company-provided take-home vehicle and gas card, company-provided cell phone and tablet, health, dental, and vision benefits, 401k retirement plan with company match, and scaled PTO based on length of service.
Contact Roy and Dana Finley at 803-677-1500 or check out their job postings on Facebook or ZipRecruiter.
AAA Air when you need us. AAA Heating and Air.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs, founded by firemen, with Chris Clark.
The 2007 South Carolina class was, at that time, 6th in the country and 4th in the SEC, which is amazing.
Wes Mitchell.
You know, I think if you're South Carolina, you're aiming to at least be at 50%. Then in theory, you're adding talent, you're getting better, you're putting yourself in a position to compete.
And Tyler Head.
It's been a great week for South Carolina. On the recruiting front, still certainly plenty to talk about.
On the home of the Gamecocks, 107.5 The Game.
And welcome into the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs here on 107.5 The Game. Tyler Head and Chris Clark along with you on this Friday morning. Yes, you finally made it to the end of your abbreviated week with the 4th of July holiday. Weekend ahead, a little bit of a slow weekend in the sports world, just baseball before they jump into the All-Star break. But plenty of things to talk about, Gamecock related. But Chris, I have to ask you the most pressing sports question of the day, because this news broke literally as we were going off the air yesterday. Your thoughts on Victor Wembanyama versus Britney Spears?
Fascinating. Didn't have it on. You were talking about an unrelated bingo card. Did not have this one on the 2023 bingo card. Although you probably should, right?
Why not?
Is there anything that you could put on a 2023 bingo card where you're like, nah, there's no way that'll happen? It
almost kind of reminded me of like a Mad Lib.
Yeah.
You know, where you just like throw random words and it makes it end up being funny. It kind of sounds like, what's that, The Onion, where they put the fake headlines like, Victor Wembanyama, security guard, hits Britney Spears in the face. Like, that was an Onion headline. I'd be like, yeah, that sounds about right. But no, it was real.
Yeah, and then you have, who's the other one now? Babylon Bee, I think, is another one.
Yes.
That has stuff, yeah. I mean, increasingly, we are living in a, like South Park episode or like a Simpsons world. You know how the Simpsons, they'll predict all these things that seem ridiculous and they end up happening 15, 20 years later. Some of them serious, some of them not. And so, I mean, we're coming off, I don't know if you saw this one too, Tyler, and I will actually answer your question here shortly. There was, a lady who wanted to get off the plane in the middle of the plane because she saw a reptilian shapeshifter or something like that on the plane. I mean, we got all sorts of craziness going on.
Wasn't that a Twilight Zone episode? Something about something on the wing of the plane.
See, all these fictional things, like, they just come true now. I have not really dove in and analyzed the Britney Spears Wembanyama thing. I was automatically a fan of Wembanyama because he said that the first, like, his training exercise was going to be breakfast tacos.
Yes.
So I immediately felt a kinship with him. The funniest part of it, and I mean, hopefully, I guess nobody's hurt or anything, so we can laugh about it. But the funniest part is how apparently Britney Spears hit herself.
Yeah.
It was her own hand that did the damage. So it reminded me of when my dad would be like, stop hitting yourself, and would do that whole thing. Yeah. So I couldn't stop thinking about that.
Preston and I had the debate this morning. Does Wembanyama even know who Britney Spears is? Because he's from France and he's 19. So he wouldn't have been alive when she was at the height of her pop success. And again, he's
crazy.
Hasn't been living in America. So I don't know what the conversation about her is overseas necessarily. So he may not really have an idea who Britney Spears is.
Yeah, we don't know if she's big in France or was big in France. I'm sure she was at one point.
Sure.
He's probably got no thoughts on Britney versus Christina from back in the day.
He may not know who Christina Aguilera is either.
Probably doesn't. Yeah, that was something. So I'm sure we will let who I guess TMZ is all over this story.
Of course.
We'll let them cover it, and we'll double back with more info if we get it, and we'll analyze it from there.
So you threw something out yesterday on something we could do for today's show, which I'm excited about.
Yep.
We're in the season of list, and we want to power rank the best plays in South Carolina football history. We talked a little bit about this yesterday when discussing games to go back and watch, and a lot of people, in referencing certain games, had a particular play or a particular moment that stood out for them. Obviously the Outback Bowl, you had the Clowney hit, DJ Swearinger in the 2012 Clemson game, things like that. And it kind of gets the conversation going of what, if anything, is the ultimate power list of some of these plays.
Yeah, and this is I started a thread on this on Gamecock Central yesterday at actually right before our show ended. When we were on a break, Tyler, and it has 119 replies. So
goodness.
Yeah, we've gotten a lot in. And can we open things up on the Firehouse Subs text line?
Absolutely. Firehouse Subs text line, Love Chevrolet phone lines, 803-404-6100. Let us know what would be on your list of greatest plays in South Carolina football history.
So last night, I was sitting around and trying to go through some of the plays. And the first thing is I already know I'm pre-mad at myself because I'm sure somebody's going to write in on the Firehouse Subs text line with something or call with something, or I'm going to go through our thread here on Gamecock Central and I'll say, how in the world did I forget that one? And I'm going to make an admission. I have not been able to power rank these. Like, I'm trying my best.
Okay.
I think I have a number one. 1 through 5 is going to be tough, right?
Okay.
Or like 1 through 10. But let me give you some of the ones I've written down, and I'm going to try to go somewhat in order here.
And which forum did you post that on? Was it the
I'm on
Insider
the Insiders forum here.
Okay.
Yep, for our subscribers.
I'm trying to pull it up here.
So there are a lot. And I think in general, most fans will probably agree with this. Like, games you were at are more meaningful, probably.
Yes.
When you see the play in person. I think games where a play happens where it's especially meaningful in terms of, it's a touchdown or it's a game winner or it's a come from behind or something of that nature. Just the importance of the play.
Sure.
Combined with being a great play, I think makes it even better. So how do we want to do this? Are we counting down? Or are we?
You don't have like a numbered list, like 1 through 5 or anything?
Not really. I have a number 1.
Okay.
Which I don't feel great about.
All right.
I don't feel great about, but it's in the top 5 for sure.
Why is that?
I just think it's the best play I've seen.
Well, why don't you feel great about it, though?
Because there's so many others.
Okay.
There's so many others where you're like, this one may be better.
And this is kind of one of those, there's no wrong answer here necessarily. It's all up to your personal opinion. And certainly let us know what your thoughts are on the Firehouse Subs text line 803-404-6100. Because as long as it's a positive play for South Carolina, it's hard to argue against, right?
Yeah, nobody's putting in negative plays. Nobody's going to put the push off as the most amazing play, for example, from the Clemson game back in the day. That was something that was interesting, Tyler, when I was going through this list.
Yep.
There was not as many plays from the Clemson series as I would thought, right? And
okay.
I think some of that is just when you look at the time frame that I've actually covered the program and watched the program, it's a little bit more recent. I know we've got a lot of people listening, got a lot of people on our forums who will be pulling out plays from the 80s, and things like that. And I don't really have as much of that frame of reference. There are certainly some plays from the Clemson series, like during the 5-peat, from 2000, what was that, 2009 until 13.
Right.
Yeah. There are certainly some plays from that. Let me just throw one out here. Let me just get us started.
Okay.
So there was a game. It was actually one of the first Carolina games I'd been to. It was before I was covering the program. It was the 2004 South Carolina versus Georgia game.
Okay.
So you probably already remember the score and everything that happened in that game, Tyler, with your photographic memory.
I'm thinking bad. That wasn't the Pollock interception game. That was 02, I believe.
That was before.
Yeah.
South Carolina was up. The ending to this one was not as good. They were up 16-0 at one point. Georgia closed it to 16-6 at halftime, ended up winning 20-16. So South Carolina got blanked in the second half. Georgia was number 3 at the time. Coach Simpson had an interception in that game that was, to this day, maybe in the top 10 for me. Mm-hmm. David Green was the quarterback. If you didn't know, Tyler, he and David Pollock were very close.
I heard that a few times.
Heard that a few times on the broadcast. But Green didn't have a great day, but early in the game, Green threw, I think it was maybe like a deep out route to the sideline, and Coach Simpson came flying over from his safety spot, picked it off, spun around, and then ran 57 yards into the end zone. The play is still on YouTube for anybody who wants to go look it up. Coach Simpson interception versus Georgia. One of the best plays I've ever seen. Coach Simpson was incredible. I think he's probably underrated, like, as time has passed. A lot of people who watch games in that era realize how good he was. He was just something else, and just made an early impact. Rock Hill native. That was one of the best plays I've ever seen.
Yeah.
It ended up not being super important. South Carolina lost the game. That was one of the best ones.
Let's see. I'm trying to pull it up on YouTube here. I remember what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I can't picture it in my head at the moment.
Yeah, it was phenomenal. Here's another one I wrote down. And all these, I'm just going to try to go to like my top 5 or top 10. We'll see how many I end up saying. The hit has to be in there.
Sure.
I don't know that we need to spend tons of time on that. We all saw it. We know, like, just setting the stage for the referee gets the ball spot wrong. The story that came out years later was that the referee just pointed the wrong way, and then he had to go with it.
I loved Spurrier losing his mind on that,
Lost his mind. Team lost his mind. They have to go back out there. And then that gave us the hit. Iconic play, not just around here, but in college football. So that's another one for me. Here's another one that probably doesn't get talked about as much. Missouri, South Carolina, 2013. Connor Shaw comes off the bench and leads South Carolina to a 2-overtime victory against Missouri. Missouri missed a kick at the end of the game that ended up giving South Carolina the lead there. But there was a play late in that game where, let me pull up the exact, it was not third, 19. There was a 4th down play that Connor Shaw, you had a must get, and it was late in the game. I think it was 4th and 15. That's when Missouri had Michael Sam, so they're heating you up. Connor Shaw comes in the game late. You got a 4th and 15. It looks really, really bad. Connor Shaw, they get a little switch route. Missouri plays man coverage. You get a switch route. Throws it to Ellington in the corner of the end zone where all the Gamecock fans happen to be sitting. And then South Carolina goes on to win the game. That was a play that I feel like is underrated in Gamecock lore.
That's a good one. I found the Simpson interception. I'm watching it back now. For 2004, this is really good quality on YouTube, by the way. I can actually read the numbers.
This got kind of the JP Sports look on it.
Yeah. Oh, he definitely came out of nowhere on that one.
Yeah, so that was going towards, Simpson running was towards the student section.
Yes.
And he covered so much ground on that play. Then I think he had the dive at the end.
Yep.
Phenomenal play. And it was still one of the rangiest plays that I've ever seen a DB make. That was an awesome play. So to recap, we got the Coach Simpson interception 2004 against Georgia. Like, some people might roll their eyes a little bit because say, well, South Carolina lost that game. Like, it doesn't really matter. But it makes my, I'm going to say top 10.
Okay.
Just because of how impressive the play was.
Definitely.
I mean, the amount, and he caught a ball, he ran it back for a touchdown. Like, we see that sometimes, but the amount of ground that he covered, and I think if you were in there in person, if you were in that stadium to get the vantage point from the end zone of seeing him come from at least the middle of the field, if not farther, all the way to the sideline to pick that ball off and then be able to run it back, it was huge. The stadium, one of the loudest I've heard the stadium, actually. Things got deflated later, but that made it. Connor Shaw to Bruce Ellington on 4th down against Missouri to keep South Carolina in it, and then the hit. That's the 3 that I've got so far.
It's a good one.
So hoping that some Gamecock fans will chime in on the Firehouse Subs text line too.
Yeah, absolutely. Let us know on the Firehouse Subs text line 803-404-6100. We'll revisit this a little bit later on in the show. Mentioning Georgia, though, in that game in 2004, we've been previewing the Georgia game for this year, and we haven't gotten around to it. We will actually hit that next and, again, revisit the power ranking of plays a little bit later on in the show. You are listening to the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs on 107.5 The Game.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. 107.5 The Game.
Speaking of teases, Tyler, I teased how Firehouse Subs, our friends Larry Chandler and the team at Firehouse Subs, they got a new sub coming out, new specialty sub coming out on July 10th. From what we saw yesterday, I'm not going to attempt my terrible pronunciation again based on what they put out on social media, but it looks like there's some meatball involved and some pepperoni involved, and it sounds outstanding. That'll be the limited time offer. Just finished up the smoking triple stack, which was awesome. Hope you got it. A new sub coming for a limited time with pepperoni and meatball. More on that soon, but for now, sub of the day. There's one for every single day of the week at all 14 Midlands Firehouse Subs locations. And today's sub of the day, Jamaican jerk turkey. You can get it for $7.99 for a medium or $5.99 for a small. Just walk in any of your local Midlands Firehouse Subs locations. Again, there's 14 of them. If you want to find the closest one to you, go to firehousesubs.com. And if you want to use the Rapid Rescue to order, you can do that, so it'll be waiting on you when you get into the store. If you want the sub of the day, go into the store and order it right there. Again, $7.99 for a medium, $5.99 for a small. It's the Jamaican jerk turkey. Also, download the Firehouse Subs app so you can earn yourself some rewards on your purchases. That's the Jamaican jerk turkey sub of the day at Firehouse Subs.
We continue our preview of the 2023 Gamecock schedule with Georgia coming up next. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour on 107.5 The Game.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. Presented by Firehouse Subs. Founded by firemen with Chris Clark, Wes Mitchell, and Tyler Head on your home of the Gamecocks. 107.5 The Game.
With Des Williams in front of Danny Ware. 6 carries, 16 yards for Ware. That toss picked off by Cole Simpson. And the prize freshman taking this one back all the way for Carolina.
And that was the aforementioned interception in the 2004 South Carolina Georgia game that would put the Gamecocks up 16-0 early on in the second quarter there. One of Chris's favorite all-time plays in Carolina history. And I finally found the thread that you were talking about, and quite a lot of input on that. And we'll certainly get to some of those. Got some coming in on the Firehouse Subs text line as well. But it's convenient timing that you mentioned that play against Georgia, because we are previewing opponents for South Carolina this upcoming season, and Georgia is the next one on the list. And this is a team that obviously came into Williams-Brice Stadium last year. It wasn't pretty, 48-7. There was a lot of unknowns about South Carolina at that point earlier on in the season. Spencer Rattler certainly wasn't in the form that he was by season's end, and the hope would be, it's a tough 5-game slate to open up the season, but the hope is by the time you get to that Georgia game in week number 3, we've learned a lot about that team, about this team after playing North Carolina and Furman to some degree, and that, I don't know if anybody's expecting them to go out there and pull off the upset this time around, but at least look better than he did last year.
Yeah, I mean, just being more competitive. We were talking about moral victories the other day, Tyler. I mean, nobody's going to be satisfied with that, but I think you have to recognize, where Georgia is as a program. They've won 2 straight national titles. They're going for a third. They're almost drafting rather than recruiting now. the lines of scrimmage, they're really, really good. And sure, they lost a good bit off last year's team, but the unfortunate news for South Carolina, the rest of the SEC, is they have recruited so well that they've still got a lot of really good players. There's some young players in the hopper that they feel really good about over there, and they've got a lot of established talent back too. The thing about, you look at Georgia's start, been over this before too. First 2 games, they got 4 home games to open the season.
Yes,
Georgia does, and the first 2 are against UT Martin and Ball State. They will not be tested by either of those programs. Those will be over by the half, if not before. And so you'll have a well-rested, albeit untested Georgia team. Now, Kirby Smart does a good job of motivating his guys.
Sure.
They win a second straight national title, and he had helped formulate the narrative in their locker room that nobody thought that they were going to be any good.
They're supposed to go 6-6 for this.
6-6, and all these things. And so I do not see this as a situation if you're hoping, all right, well, South Carolina, Georgia might look past them. I don't think so. They got UAB the next week.
Yeah.
At home again. I do not see Georgia looking past South Carolina at all, and I think some of that's a little overrated anyway.
And that's an unfortunate part about the way Georgia's schedule falls is you're really not going to know a whole lot about them by week number 3 because, again, they're unlikely to be tested by Ball State and UT Martin, and especially when you talk about the quarterback position with Carson Beck likely to be the one that's starting this fall. I mean, he's probably going to get half in both those games, throw a touchdown or 2, but not really see a whole lot of pressure, not really see him having to, and to that degree, Mike Bobo as well as the offensive coordinator, not really showing you the full playbook because they don't need to. Again, they're going to most likely dominate these teams and rest their starters as soon as they can. So you're going into Athens against this team with more questions than answers in week number 3.
Yeah, you are. And, for South Carolina, they're going to be tested more early. I think we'll know more about this team. Like, we're going to go out of the first 2 weeks for Georgia saying, okay, they're 2-0, and they're really good. They look really good. How good can they be? Is this another, is this a college football playoff team? My feeling is we're probably going to be saying yes, but it's more of, is this a national title team? Is this the SEC champion? Whereas with South Carolina, I think the narrative will kind of formulate over their first couple games, especially with the North Carolina test, right?
Yeah.
That's going to be a litmus test. That's going to be a benchmark, whatever you want to call it, as to not only how good they can be this year, but can they go give Georgia a game in Athens? And past couple years, this game has not been competitive. Last season at Williams-Brice was even less competitive, really, than the year before. And I think there are a lot of reasons for that. Georgia was a lot better. South Carolina also had, a mix of factors, I think, too, that kind of held them back. I mean, being that banged up as they were going into that game did not help. They got off to a slow start, and the wheels just kind of came off. They lost that game very, very early. I do know this is one that South Carolina's players and coaching staff is really looking forward to, and they're looking forward to the other ones. They're not looking past North Carolina or any other team on the schedule, but this is one that I know they want to equip themselves better, and they're going to go into this game, I think, with more confidence than they had in the past. And Tyler, I'm glad we have you here in general, but we have somewhat of an in-house expert on Georgia, so I'm glad. What is the thought in Athens right now as far as the ceiling of this team? Because they did lose a good bit, right? But I start with quarterback, right? Like, yes. Carson Beck's a talented kid. Mm-hmm. He's got an arm. I saw some clips of him throwing the other day. He's got a heck of an arm. Obviously, they're going to be loaded with talent, but what's the feeling right now?
I think the feeling is, look, everybody in Athens expecting them to go 15-0 and win another national championship. I don't think that's a surprise there, but with Carson Beck, there's so much talent around him. He doesn't have to go out there and be a superstar. Doesn't have to go out there and be a Heisman contender. As long as he gets the ball where it needs to go and takes care of it and doesn't throw 20 interceptions, this offense shouldn't drop off too much from what we saw last year. You got obviously Brock Bowers returning for his 3rd year, going to be a monster. You look at wide receiver, you got guys returning like Ladd McConkey and Marcus Rosemary-Jackson. You also add Ra Thomas from Mississippi State and Dominic Levitt from Missouri, two very good contributors in their own right there. So they're going to be loaded there. Obviously, the running back position going to be loaded. The only one you lost from last year was Kenny McIntosh, and the combination of Edwards, Milton, and Robinson combined for over 100 yards and 18 touchdowns last year. No surprise, the offensive line is going to be really, really strong too. So again, Carson Beck doesn't have to go out there and be a hero. As long as he just takes care of the ball and doesn't make stupid mistakes, the offense should be fine. And no surprise, the defense is as loaded as ever, despite losing, again, a handful of guys to the draft. So the sense that I get from people in Athens is that it's kind of much of the same. I mean, just kind of reloading, which is, what we've gotten so used to with the Alabamas of the world. Like, oh, they lost X, Y, and Z. Oh, well, the guy behind him's probably just as good. And that's kind of the situation that I feel we're getting with Georgia, too.
Yeah, and, the thing is, I think this probably was discussed after they won the national title, but there was a lot of talk about the Stetson Bennett game manager tag, and I'm not really sure why that got put on, maybe just because he wasn't some highly heralded recruit. A lot of people wanted to run him off, It seemed like, and all he did was get the job done. But if you actually watch the games, he was not a game manager. He was actually quite dynamic.
Not at all.
And so I'm kind of wondering how much does Georgia miss that, because
sure,
they're not going to get that with Carson Beck or Brock Vandegrift or anyone else. They're not going to have that level of dynamic playmaking ability that Stetson Bennett gave them. So I don't think that could be even a team like Georgia. You got to have really good quarterback play, and typically they have, even if it hasn't been flashy. Stetson Bennett actually gave them some flash and some pizzazz and some playmaking ability. And when you go look at the teams that win a title, most of them have a quarterback like that. It's almost more rare. Like,
sure,
maybe Jake Coker at Alabama.
Yeah.
He's more huge arm.
Definitely.
But he's more of like your non-dynamic quarterback. Most of the other ones, quite dynamic.
And Carson Beck is such a rare instance in college football these days. He's literally sat for a handful of years waiting for this opportunity. He's coming in to, I believe, his redshirt junior year. Most guys end up transferring at that point in time, especially somebody that comes in as a 4-star recruit like he has. But when you look at it, he's coming in garbage time and stuff like that. He hasn't played like real meaningful football at this level in several years. Again, coming up in mop-up duty, hasn't really had to had any pressure put on him. So it'll be interesting to see what he does against South Carolina in his first game in an SEC environment where that competition level is comparable to what you have on your team.
Yeah, it is. And, waiting his turn, and look, has the physical tools and ability, and I think he'll have an opportunity to thrive because he's going to have such a good offensive line around him. And he's got an experienced coaching staff around him. He's going to have backs. I've heard some talk, Georgia's not as deep at running back. Well, maybe that's true, but they're still really good. Their running back room would be the envy of many programs around the country, even if they're not quite as deep.
More importantly than the running back position, the offensive line really is not taking a drop off. The only piece they lost was Broderick Jones at left tackle, but everybody else is returning.
Yeah. And they typically, if you go back and look at how Georgia recruits on the offensive line, it's really good. So, I think for South Carolina, if we're going to take kind of the big picture view in a very quick, way too early preview of the game, I mean, they're going to have to follow the upset formula in this one. You're going to have to make some big explosive plays. I think this is a big Spencer Rattler, Juice Wells game. You're probably not going to line up and run the football. Remember the stat that we were talking about with Wes the other day?
Yes, 150 yards.
Yeah, only 2 times in the past, however many years that was, 98% of the time, they're not giving up 150 yards. So everybody's going to go in and say, well, you got to be able to run the ball against Georgia to win.
Right.
Not necessarily. You're going to have to go hit some explosive plays on them, turn them over like South Carolina did in the 2019 huge upset.
Right. So we will dive more into Georgia once that game gets closer, but that's our way too early preview as we sit here early on in July. We'll dive into more of your greatest plays in South Carolina football history. Coming up next, it is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs on 107.5 The Game.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. 107.5 The Game.
Y'all have heard us talk about our good friend of the show, Kendall Walsh, huge Gamecock fan, huge fan of the station here at 107.5, always listening. We always appreciate Kendall Walsh, and we also appreciate everything that she does at Gold Line Framing. Custom framing, gallery, of art and other really cool gifts. You can find them at 511 12th Street in West Columbia. That's 29169. In business for over 20 years, right across from Zesto in West Columbia. They're open Tuesday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 5:30 p.m., and Saturday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Now, what can Goldline Framing do for you? Well, aside from their art gallery and the really cool gifts, they have diplomas, original artwork, canvases, jerseys, flags. They can help you with all of your custom framing needs. If you think you may possibly be able to frame something or shadow box something, whatever it may be, take it over to Kendall Walsh and her team over at Goldline Framing. They can do it for you. They also have a great art gallery along with home decor, furniture, and other really cool gift items in their store. Again, it's Goldline Framing, 511 12th Street, West Columbia, right across from the Big Chocolate Dipped Cone in the Sky. You can also call them, 803-739-1337, and follow them on social at Goldline Framing SC. That's Kendall Walsh, our good friend at Goldline Framing.
All right, we'll have more of your greatest plays coming up next. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour on 107.5 The Game.
For decades, Rolling Stone has set the bar for entertainment publications. Today, Rolling Stone Music Now takes over in podcast form.
It is incredible Beyonce is in this place that I think is so enviable. I mean, it's so interesting that she starts with ballads.
Yeah, when I opened the live stream, it's like, what's going on? I thought this was going to be a different tone for the opening of the concert, but it is really cool that she's doing this moment, you know, as intimate as you can get in a Beyonce stadium show.
Rolling Stone Music Now, wherever you listen.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. Presented by Firehouse Subs. Founded by firemen with Chris Clark, Wes Mitchell, and Tyler Head on your home of the Gamecocks. 107.5 The Game.
Goal from the 15. Play clock down to 3. Connor Shaw lifts the leg. It's all right here. Shaw out of the gun. Going to the corner of the end zone. Touchdown! Touchdown Carolina! Touchdown Bruce Ellington on a beautiful throw within a yard of a window.
That was the call on the Gamecocks Radio Network. Back in 2013, Connor Shaw, ice water in the veins on that 4th down and 15 to tie the game with Missouri, leading to another overtime for the Gamecocks. Yeah, definitely got to be up there on that list of greatest plays.
Yeah, Connor Shaw, I think, took a sack on 1st down. Again, Missouri's defense that year was really good. Michael Sam, I think it was Shane Ray was their other end.
He was.
He was a heck of a player, too. And 2nd down, I don't remember what happened. The 3rd down play, they threw to Nick Jones, and he just barely didn't come down with it. Contested ball. So the 4th down, I mean, that was one of those plays you're like, okay, last gasp.
Sure. It's
probably not working out. You're sitting on your own 15, or not on your own, you're at the Missouri 15-yard line, and you got to score a touchdown. And yeah, they just ran that little switch route. They happened to get man coverage and got great protection, actually. Great route by Ellington right into the corner of the end zone. And then obviously South Carolina went on to win in 2 overtimes. So one of the more exciting games in Carolina history. And that was one of the biggest plays. There were several plays that they had to make in that game, but obviously that was a big one.
Got a few coming in on the Firehouse Subs text line. Nameless texter says Alshon's one-handed catch versus Alabama.
That is another good one. I think that was on Dre Kirkpatrick, who went on to play for the Cincinnati Bengals. And by the way, Tyler, Dre Kirkpatrick now has a son who's a prospect. So we're all just continuing to get
Isn't that kind of crazy
older.
now? Vernon Hayes, the Georgia fullback from the Cottontail boot game. Veron Hayes, sorry. Veron Hayes. His son,
yes,
I think committed to Bama a year or two ago.
Justice Haynes?
Yeah, Justice Haynes.
Yeah.
And I know,
he's really good.
I know, hearing wow, he's got a son that's about to play college football. That's crazy to think about. Let's see here. Zach says, after the hit, something that is often forgotten is Shaw to Ace for the touchdown right after.
Yes. It took me a second to think about that one. That's a really good pick. Let me submit another.
All right.
Connor Shaw to Bruce Ellington. Was that the one? No. The Ace Sanders one was a separate one. Yeah. So to win that game, Connor Shaw or Dylan Thompson. I'm thinking about a different bowl game now. So Dylan Thompson threw what ended up being the game-winning touchdown pass to Bruce Ellington in a bowl game. That was an incredible play as well, and that was against Michigan. Remember, Connor Shaw had been banged up in that game. 17 seconds left in that game. 17 seconds. And South Carolina's at about the 32 or so of Michigan, second down. And Dylan Thompson got blasted, threw the ball downfield to Bruce Ellington, and that ended up being the game-winning score because Carolina was down 1 at that point. So you're kind of thinking maybe, hit an explosive passing play. You got 1 timeout. Maybe go try to kick the field goal at that point. But as it turned out, threw a touchdown pass with 11 seconds left in the game to Bruce Ellington, ended up winning 33-28. That was another big one. That was another just wild game. Had a bunch of plays in that one. The hit obviously being one of them.
I'm scanning through your thread on the Gamecock Central forum. A lot of people bring up the Melvin Ingram fake punt against Georgia 2011. That was obviously a big one. Here's a little bit of a deeper cut. Micah Davis, 75-yard touchdown against UNC in 2013.
Yeah, that was a great play. What a run by Mike Davis. You see some other ones I wrote down here. So if you go to baseball, Whit Merrifield's hit was obviously a big one because that gives you a national title. I think you could go to earlier in the College World Series. You're down to your last strike, last out against Oklahoma. Jackie Bradley Jr. comes through with the base knock. You end up winning that game. Another one that some people submitted was the Jake Williams throw from outfield to get a Florida player at the plate. I think Mike Zunino, hit the ball. And that was one because it was so important but also unexpected. Jake Williams was not a guy that was considered to have a great arm out there in left. He lobbed it out, lobbed it to home, got the runner, and obviously South Carolina goes on to win that game. So that was another huge play.
Let's see here. Got another one coming in on Firehouse Subs text line. Dylan to Bruce in 2014 bowl game against Wisconsin. I believe that was the Capital One Bowl. Is that right?
Yes, that would have been the Capital One Bowl. I'm not recalling that one. I wonder if they were talking about the one I was just describing.
Maybe.
Maybe not. I don't know. I'm surprised nobody's brought up the fade yet. That's got to be one.
I think I saw somebody in the forum.
Yeah, I think some people brought it up on the forum. That was a really good one. There's another one that I would like to submit to. Actually, 2 more. And I'm going to give my top after the break.
All right.
But a couple more. The Xavier Legette bowl game catch against Notre Dame.
That was a good one.
They did not end up winning that game. But so when we were in the bowl game, we were on the side of the stands, not in the corner, but we could look over, we were on the side where he caught it, and we could look to our left and see the end zone. First of all, the throw was ridiculous. Spencer Rattler rolling to his left and making that throw. When the throw went up, I was like, my gosh, I don't even know where that's going, but that's an impressive throw. Xavier Legette catching that one. One of the best catches I've ever seen, and maybe the best. Still don't know how he caught it and got inbounds. It just a crazy catch there. That was one. Also, South Carolina playing Tennessee when Jadeveon Clowney was in town. And I want to say, what year was this? 2012. It was the game Marcus Lattimore got hurt. Tennessee came back with a vengeance. And you just had this feeling sitting there like, Clowney needs to make something happen. And he was having a battle all game with, I think it was Juwan James at left tackle. Clowney comes through and James got the best of him sometimes that game. Clowney whipped James on a pass rush move, strip sack. Carolina gets the ball. They end up winning the game. So that was another play that really, really continues to stick out to me, might be in the top 10 because it was just a phenomenal individual effort.
Definitely. We'll come back and wrap up today's edition of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, talking about more of your favorite plays coming up next here on 107.5 The Game.
Hour 107.5 The Game.
Hey, maybe you don't spend a lot of time thinking about your insurance, what your coverage is, what you're paying. But let me encourage you to go take a look at it today. What is your coverage like? Could you switch and could you save? I think you probably could. Give our friend Amy Mason Cup a call at Amy Mason Cup State Farm. Just like I did, just like my family did. She helped us switch and save. If you're looking to switch and save on your insurance, Amy Mason Cup State Farm and her team can give you a personalized quote to meet your needs and help you save. They have you covered on all sorts of insurance products with personalized quotes and great service. Anything from home, auto, boat, renters, life, anything else you have on the insurance front. If you just have a question, visit her website at amymasoncup.com. That's Amy, MASINCUPP.com, or give her a call today, 803-772-5554. If you want to pay her a visit, her office is just off the St. Andrews Road exit on I-26, 612 St. Andrews Road, Suite 4, Ashland Park Plaza in Columbia. Again, Amy Mason Cup. Any insurance questions that you have, any personalized quotes that you have that you would like to get, she can help you switch and save on a variety of insurance products. It's Amy Mason Cup State Farm, 803-772-5554. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Wrap up the day next here on 107.5 The Game.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. Presented by Firehouse Subs. Founded by firemen with Chris Clark, Wes Mitchell, and Tyler Head on your home of the Gamecocks. 107.5 The Game.
Pressure! Clowney just dives in, hits the defender, the ball's on the ground. The Gamecocks have it! The Gamecocks have it! The Gamecocks take it over! Clowney just burst through, ripped the helmet off the tailback, and took it away! He took it away! Don't do us like that!
That was the call on the Gamecocks radio network all the way back in 2013 in that Outback Bowl. The famous hit by Jadeveon Clowney to rightfully get the ball back for South Carolina after they had been gypped just the play before. And obviously that's a great call on the Gamecocks radio network, but I still love the ESPN call of Mike Tirico, just adamant the Gamecocks deserve to have the ball, and they do.
Yeah, that was a great one. What a karma play if you believe in those things.
Ball don't lie.
Ball don't lie. There's no doubt. What a play. Man, we have still, by the way, we haven't scratched the surface on just all the great plays. We're going to be leaving some out.
We can revisit this conversation. Well, we got Wes coming back next week.
Yeah,
we'll get his take on it. This is not the only time we'll discuss this, I promise.
Yes, we will return with more. But one more submission that I saw from the Insiders Forum that's worth mentioning is Christian Walker's home run against Coastal Carolina to send the Gamecocks to Omaha. Down 2, runners on second, third, 2 outs, 8th inning. And he absolutely tattooed one into the left field stands. Just a no-doubter. Amazing moment and super exciting, to get the Gamecocks to Omaha, back to Omaha for the first time in a while. And that was a heck of a play. All right, I'm going to give my top one, Tyler. And
all right.
I reserve the right to change my mind on this.
That's fine.
By the time I walk out of here. But this is kind of where I've landed. I think the best play I've ever seen is the Ace Sanders punt return against Georgia.
I did see a lot of people mention that on the forum.
A lot of people picked that one. There are a lot of reasons for it. It was an incredible individual effort by Ace Sanders. He kind of dropped the ball at first, didn't field it cleanly. The moves. He by the way, had an amazing punt return that same year against Missouri. He didn't quite score. It was maybe even more impressive, though. But he scored on the Georgia one. Just a great play. South Carolina obviously completely dominated that game. So it just kind of piled it on when that happened. In the stadium, I've tried to think about this because there's been a lot of loud moments in Williams-Brice. That was probably the loudest I've ever heard it.
Definitely.
It was a complete mosh pit everywhere in the stadium. So that's probably my number one for right now.
Awesome. Again, we'll revisit this conversation on later episodes, but fun way to spend a Friday here on the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Quick programming note, no halftime show with Jay and Terry today. CBS Sports Radio coming up next. Heath Klein will be back in at 3 o'clock for his regular show, so please stick around for that. And we'll be back in on Monday with Wes Mitchell as well here on the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs on 107.5 The Game.